Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the Media Production Technology Show 2023. Thank you so much for choosing our panel. It's the best one. Woo. I'm LJ Rich. I'm music artist, BBC TV presenter. I have the unrivaled honor of moderating this afternoon's chat with none other than TikTok leads Stephen Norton and Normanno Pisani. Round of applause. Very nice. Thank you very much. It's lovely to have you here. For those of you who haven't heard of TikTok, it's a video entertainment app which usually involves a musical soundtrack. Creative artists post highly polished or not at all polished videos. They use real-time video manipulation, show off the dance moves. All this amid videos of cats ringing a bell for food. I find it utterly fascinating. Let's start by giving you both the opportunity to talk a little bit about what you do in suitably customary short-form style. Stephen, let's start with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Steve. I'm the vertical lead for entertainment, audio, and sport at TikTok. Very, very excited to be here today. It's my first media production show. I work within our global business solutions side of TikTok, and very simply that means I assist and work with all of the biggest brands in the entertainment space in unlocking the power of the TikTok audience through paid opportunities and those paid partnership opportunities. I've got to say, I'm a very lucky man. I work with, in my opinion, some of the coolest brands in the world: Walt Disney Pictures, Paramount Pictures, Sony Pictures, just to name a few. And we've seen some amazing successes on TikTok working with the biggest entertainment brands in the world. And intrinsic to TikTok, we are an entertainment platform first and foremost. So that's what something, gives partners and all partners in the entertainment space something a really unique way of being able to tell their story. So very excited to be here today.
Oh, thanks for coming. It's lovely to have you. And
sure.
Normanno, tell us, what do you do?
Thank you, LJ. Well, hi everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having us. I'm Normanno Pisani. I've actually been at TikTok for 5 years. I've been lucky enough to be employee number 6 for TikTok in Europe. And my role is to lead the global entertainment partnership team, which is basically the team supporting entertainment and media organization on their content strategy to approach the platform, but also building strategic partnership with entertainment organization in order to make sure that our partners can really think TikTok first and can really exploit the platform for what it is and to bring content to our users.
Brilliant, thank you. Now, audience, you'll be familiar with using Slido if you haven't done so in that. I'm not sure if this is working. Can you hear me okay? Oh, sometimes you can hear me, sometimes not. Here comes the stick mic. Thank you very much. You're welcome to give me even more microphones as the afternoon goes on. I'm fully expecting to finish this with 4 microphones held like this. All right, so audience, you'll be familiar with Slido if you were in the last session. Come on, give us your questions. Head to slido.com and you can just enter the hashtag MPTS 2023. Give us your questions, choose the Keynote area, ask away. The best questions will be asked up here on stage, possibly some of the worst questions if I run out of these questions. So let's start with a question that most people who hear you work for TikTok will probably ask you. What are people doing on TikTok that makes them the trailblazers? What are they doing that's sticky? What are they doing that's getting eyeballs on their content? So,
Normanno,
yep.
You go for it.
It's a great question. I think what's interesting about TikTok is that the main feed is called the For You feed. And instead of...
Here comes another stick mic, yes. That's 2. It's 1 more to collect the whole set. Listen, I think production are doing brilliantly because that is a very super fast response. Thank you. So we're just talking about what the trailblazers are doing on TikTok. What are people doing right?
So as I was mentioning before, what's interesting about TikTok is that the main feed is called the For You feed. That instead of being based solely on your content graph, on the social graph where you can see your friends and your family, is based on your content graph, which basically means that the app will understand the kind of content that you like and therefore surface you more content related to that, which is why brands can really leverage TikTok for 3 main things. The first one, discovery, and making sure that they are connecting with new audience. The second area is to connect with audience in an authentic way. And then the third area is to empower co-creation. So it's not about only sharing content one-sided, but actually is like passing the ball back to the community and making sure that they can respond. So we've seen a lot of brands are in entertainment really leveraging the platform for these three elements. I will say the BBC is definitely a great example. They have more than 40 accounts on the platform. We've seen HBO Max, and we were chatting about this before getting on stage. That is also leveraging the platform, especially for the co-creation side. But then I think what's really interesting is that brands can leverage the platform almost to act as if they were creators. And that's where they are using some of the native tools of the platform to post content, such as Netflix using like the split screen feature to show like on the top part of the screen what's on the scene, and then like behind the scene and the making of that. This sort of like new form of storytelling is actually generating a new dialogue with the community, which really shows that brands are there on TikTok to portray themselves in a sort of like authentic way. But then on the other side, it's almost acting as person, almost acting as creator. And that's really what trailblazing is. That will build a very strong organic strategy, which needs to be supported by the pay side.
Yeah, and I think that, can everyone hear me, by the way?
I think so.
I've also got an incredibly loud voice as well, so I probably don't even need this microphone. And I think that's why, this is why what I do and what my team will lead on is around how can you supercharge these amazing organic conversations that some of the world's biggest brands like Netflix are seeing when they're seeing a great success or a great viral moment that's blowing up organically. How can they maximize the eyeballs on that, and how can they make that an even bigger conversation? Mana's already alluded to this, but a brand can show up and their content looks exactly the same as a TikTok user, and that's something which is really, really different, I think, around when you're thinking about TikTok and what makes us unique as a platform. We're a full screen, sound on platform, and that's something which is an amazing attention grabbing tool that brands can leverage. And we consistently see these phenomenons that blow up, these zeitgeist and culture-making moments happen on TikTok, and they happen incredibly fast. So, an example that I love is the phenomenon around the Netflix show Wednesday. Netflix, and this is when we're back to your question about trailblazers and who I think is doing an amazing job on TikTok. I think Netflix are really leading the charge when it comes to how can you be reactive and understand trends that are blowing up around your shows. Netflix very simply saw this phenomenon building around one scene and one clip from the show, which was intrinsic music was at the heart of that, and then they supercharged that with not only just supporting that by launching new content inspired by that trend, but also with media. And I think the real benefit was that there was the hashtag, the Netflix Wednesday hashtag, reached over 2 billion video views in the space of a week, which was a great way of commanding and supercharging the conversation around that show. And what we're seeing is because TikTok is this culture-making machine, where a show or a movie becomes popular on TikTok and becomes a phenomenon on TikTok, then that's translating into a huge hit on Netflix or a huge hit when it comes to in broadcast or in theatrical movies.
Brilliant. I just would like to see from the audience, could you please stick your hand up if you've watched TikTok content on the app or if you've used it at all? Okay, brilliant. And can you just stick your hand up if you create content for the app as well?
Love
okay,
it.
That's really cool. Thank you. It just gives us an idea of the sort of permeation of the app. And obviously, people here at the Media Production Technology Show, we want to learn from this successful format. So what do you think the production industry can learn from TikTok?
It's a great question. I think what we've seen across the board is that there is a tendency of using TikTok only to promote what's new, what's coming up, but actually content on TikTok doesn't necessarily have an expiry date. If you've used TikTok before, you'll see that the For You feed will really showcase content on the basis of what you like and not necessarily when it was posted. Which I think, for the media industry, it's quite interesting because it means that it's not only about what's coming up, but it's also a great way to exploit catalog and making sure that you're bringing that onto the platform. We've seen accounts like Top Gear doing that, for example, or The Office, which is of course a great show, but they are getting great numbers on TikTok. But then what's interesting is that it's not only about TV shows, but also about existing TV format. I was actually checking out the account of like Brainiac, which used to be an ITV show a while ago. And when they joined on the platform, the viral effect of the platform, they were actually bigger than Love Island, and they were doing more views than Love Island, which really means that TikTok is this tool to, on one side, to discover a new audience, but then on the other side, really to reconnect with an existing one. And I think that's super interesting. On the other side, what's also quite interesting is that there is often the perception that in order to create content, it has to be super well produced. And actually, what we've seen is that a lot of content that really performs very well on the platform is behind the scenes, or like really bringing like the fans and the audience behind the curtains of a specific show. You were mentioning before
About House of the Dragon. Yeah, yeah. And please forgive me, Normano, if I'm going to pronounce this correctly. Negroni Spagliato. Am I doing it right?
Almost there.
Almost there. But following on from Normano's point there, HBO just saw this absolute phenomenon blow up around one very authentic, just almost like quite rough around the edges interview clip with Olivia Cook and Emma Darcy, both stars from House of the Dragon. Very simply, it was them talking about their favorite drinks and their favorite cocktail. Emma Darcy described a Negroni Spagliato. And I think if, for those of you, there's a lot of people who use TikTok in the room, you may have seen this clip and you may have seen this piece of content. I think what's really interesting about that is that not only was it just a perfect moment of a growing fandom around those two particular stars in the show, and then them releasing this very authentic piece of content, but also where this became a phenomenon on TikTok was because the audio sound and the audio track of Emma describing this drink just sounded so enticing, and it just made people like, wow, I want that drink. And it meant that then creators across the globe picked up that piece of content, either duetted with that piece of content, stitched that piece of content, and just that global conversation that blew up around this one piece of content then enabled House of the Dragon to just be this huge hit on our platform. So hashtag House of the Dragon's now got over 12 billion video views on TikTok. And the other, the real world impact of this trend was that actually Negroni started selling out in supermarkets across the UK and selling out in bars across the UK. And that was literally in the space of a week. And I think that's an amazing illustration of like the power of TikTok, the power of how we can mobilize audiences, and just how quick these zeitgeist moments can appear on our platform.
I think there is definitely something to be said for that authentic interaction, or at least imitating it well enough for it to be taken as such. And I have seen a trend where we are lifting the curtain on production. So there's a lot of behind the scenes footage, there's a lot of sort of crew and actors doing stuff that we don't normally get to see. I mean, it's interesting to people who don't work in the film industry as well.
Yeah.
So what's happening here? Why are we getting more of this sort of behind-the-scenes stuff? People like it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll kick this one off, and Amanda can add to it.
Yeah, I think there are, like, on one side, it's very much about building the long-term value with your fan base. And I think like a lot of organizations are actually realizing that a specific title release is not only about the moment when it's happening and when it's about to come out, but can TikTok be integrated across the full production life cycle? And having that integration is actually building a stronger fandom that is like across the board. It can be around scripting, it can be about like scouting location, and we've seen a few organizations actually not only integrating TikTok in the marketing side of things, but also testing it out for example, creating like ancillary storylines. We have a show in Italy, Laughing Out Loud, that created like a TikTok version of the show with TikTok creators. So users were able to see the content, have a look at it, and then go and consume it on Prime Video. Or Prime Video in France was looking for talents, French voices for like the new season of The Boys. So that's a really good way where it's not only about like putting your content out there, but it's actually having that dialogue with the community across the full production life cycle that on top of that will bring like even more like behind the scene, will bring like that sort of like fandom that creates that dialogue that Stephen was mentioning before.
Yeah, and that's something which when I've been working, when I'm working with say major studios and the ultimate challenge that they are trying to solve is that how do we drive interest and excitement and hype around my release, and something which we're really working together on, and this is why myself and Normano's teams work so closely together, is what is working incredibly well for driving hype and interest in releases is actually, from an advertising and marketing perspective, it's actually content that looks more organic in style. And I think that's something where you see this appetite for behind the scenes content. A great example of that recently is the Barbie movie. There's just an amazing fandom for that movie on TikTok, and the hashtag Barbie movie has already had nearly 1 billion video views, and the movie's still 2 months away from coming out. I think that's a great example of Warner Brothers understanding that even just giving sneak peeks and small little snippets of that movie to our audience are just ravenous for that type of content, and they want more and more of it. So that's when we're working with partners. It's all about how can we extend the life cycle, and how can we actually let's show them a peek behind, show them the magic of the production, because our audience just really want to see that authentic storytelling coming to life in the real form.
Brilliant.
You're going to say something there?
Well,
good.
Excellent. We're going to go on to the next question in that case, because we're going to come back to this idea of organic advertising, because I'm quite fascinated by that area. But for the meantime, I would like to talk a bit about paid partnerships, because the more social media savvy among you, which is probably all of you, will know that it's where creators are paid by brands or other companies to talk about a product or service. It's labeled as a paid partnership. And I'm sure there are best practices for doing this. So I'd love to chat about how best to do this with creators. What does a paid partnership look like? And this is also for someone who's put on Slido. They've got millions of views on their TikTok profile. They haven't been able to monetize it. How can they find ways to monetize it? So I almost want to fold this in.
Well, we've got
come see us
TikTok
afterwards.
superstar in the audience right here.
Yes, come see us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
tell us what would you do if this person came up and you're like, right, we want to do a paid partnership? How would that go?
Yeah, and I think so. We're referencing, and myself and Amana, we always talk a lot about, and we've referenced creators a huge amount already in our discussion. And creators are the lifeblood of TikTok. And when we're thinking about how can you drive, interest and leverage that amazing endorsement that creators can give on our platform, I always recommend with our partners in the entertainment space, think about how you can have like a long-standing relationship with creators. Don't just work with them when it comes to maybe specific key moments, when it comes to, from a marketing perspective, almost like very close to release, or only work with certain creators for certain types of titles. I always recommend think about how you can have a longer term relationship with creators. So I think Paramount do a great job of this. So they regularly work with a creator called Tigger Alexander, who is fantastic. I really recommend you check out his content. And he first started working with Paramount for the red carpet live stream for Top Gun Maverick, which was exclusively streamed on TikTok, which is a huge, massive moment for us. And then they've maintained that relationship with Tigger as well when it comes to other live red carpet moments, like their recent premiere for Babylon, and they're working with Tigger in some other aspects. And I think, first of all, my always recommendation is think about a longer term partnership with creators, because some huge benefits there. And then also, I think, when you're talking about best practice and how you should work with creators, just always recommend look at their content and understand their content, and give them a brief, but don't make it too restrictive, because ultimately they know what their fans and what those fandoms are going to love. And actually, if you're too prescriptive about a piece of content they make, then actually it just doesn't feel authentic and genuine to the platform. And that's what's intrinsic to TikTok. And then actually more from an operational perspective, we want our brand and we want people to be able to work with creators as much as possible. So we have this amazing platform available to us, which is called the TikTok Creator Marketplace. So if you are a media partner, if you're a media platform, if you're a production house, you can log into that platform, you can create a profile, and you can very simply look at and understand the top trending creators currently in the UK, the types of content they make, and the audiences that they can reach. And I think that's a great tool. And actually, if there's burgeoning creators in the room, there's always room for more creators to be able to join that platform, because we're all around having diverse groups of creators being able to create and work with brands on our platform.
And I think what's interesting about that is that building a relationship with a creator over time will also make it easier to work with talent. This is something that we often see with studios and media organizations, is that like having like that collaborator with the same creator. There is this creator called Reese. On TikTok, he goes as like a guy with a movie camera. He
Yeah,
used to be a TV show social producer, and he's built really this profile of being around on set and interacting with talent. And what's really good about it is that he's become very good at capturing behind the scenes content, but then at the same time also talent now like recognize him and they feel like more at ease to create content with him, which will make the content even more authentic and look more organic. And that is, it's sort of like outside of like the specific launch campaign, but it's sort of like an evergreen approach that actually keeps the content coming on TikTok and keeps the fans happy.
Oh, brilliant, thank you. Well, TikTok has been in the news recently. One of the stories is it's been banned from some government devices. I think that people who are hesitant about engaging with the app, they probably like to understand a little bit more about what's happening there. And I know that I can't interview TikTok on a stage like this in front of this incredible audience without asking you to talk a little about that.
Of course. Look, we're disappointed by that decision. We believe it's based on fundamental misconceptions about the platform. We're working to assuage those concerns that those government bodies may have. And we just want everyone to remember, TikTok is a place for over 150 million people across Europe who come to us daily to be able to create, to be able to consume content, and it's a wonderful platform for those people.
All right, thank you. Let's talk about organic content, because science fiction author William Gibson wrote a book called Pattern Recognition, and one of the characters is paid to sit in a bar and talk casually to people and casually bring up brand names in a conversation. And I think this was written in 1999. It's incredibly prophetic, I think. So I guess TikTok is a giant version of that in a way when it comes to this. I'd love some examples of brands that have got it right, which you've talked about a little, but also brands, you don't have to name and shame, it's okay, but what things are wrong, what things haven't worked. You briefly touched on pushing a creator into a kind of corner and giving them a very prescriptive brief, but what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what do you think's evolving?
It's interesting because I've been working with TikTok for 5 years, and I've seen really like brands approach the platform in very different way. The good thing actually is that there isn't like one unique right way. And I will say the key element, I think it's experimenting on the platform. It's that process of like trial and error and really making sure that you're constantly testing and see what's working, what's resonating with the audience, because like a viral moment might really be around the corner, like the House of Dragon example that we were mentioning before. Another really important thing to mention is that on TikTok, it's not about sharing content top-down, but it's really starting that dialogue with the community. We've seen recently emerging on the platform like the Wes Anderson trend, which is basically users and creators like narrating their day-to-day life or their travels using like the distinctive like Wes Anderson like style of shooting. It's really nice content, and that's a great idea for, on one side, if the studio who's going to be working with Wes to launch his new movie, that might be like a great creative idea. But then on the other side, that trend is actually something that brands can jump in and actually do their own version of that. We've seen a few football teams doing that. My favorite team, Chelsea, doing that, and it's really resonating with the community, but also creating content that is at the intersection between multiple different areas. So it might be entertainment, it might be lifestyle, it might be sports, which is ultimately the real secret sauce about TikTok. It's actually plugging different things together and involving the creators and the community to get that response.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add to that one of my favorite examples of, and I'd say we're thinking about, say, best practice and how you should really activate the power of the TikTok audience is, showing and acknowledging what they love. And I think brilliant example of that was what Warner Brothers did with the work their campaign for the latest Fantastic Beasts movie. So they understood, so Draco Malfoy has got an incredible fandom on TikTok. So hashtag Draco Malfoy, the Harry Potter character, has over 40 billion video views. It's a massive fandom for that character. And also Tom Felton, who plays that character as well. He's just such a well-loved creator on TikTok. And Warner Brothers wanted to align to that magic of Harry Potter. And I think by them identifying that actually we should have Draco and Tom Felton part of our Fantastic Beasts strategy on TikTok, which was the first time that ever there'd been that cross-pollination between talent from Harry Potter and the Fantastic Beasts franchise, and bringing those two together. And then Tom Felton became the face of Fantastic Beasts content on TikTok, and that was something which drove incredible engagement. And it was the first time that had ever happened, the bringing together those two worlds, and it happened only on TikTok. And I think it was an amazing nod to the fans and to the fandoms around Draco and Tom himself, and it saw great results.
And what's interesting about it is that Tom joined the platform, and one of the first things that he did was to use, like, we have a Q&A function where users can ask questions to creators, and he was asking, like, oh, do you want to know a little bit more about Harry Potter? And he actually, like, joined the platform, like, completely unrelated to, like, Harry Potter and Warner Brothers, but that's actually how he built the connection with the community in the first place, and that led to that integration in Fantastic Beasts, which the fans loved it.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. I've got a very quick question from Slido. Glossy, and you can only answer one. Glossy and high production values, or UGC and authentic looking?
You know what, I would say, like, there's space for both. Like, I think, and that's such, like, I don't need to give you a broad. I don't want to give you a broad answer there. But look, I'm talking to this from a lens of, like, I work with, and all of you here are content producers, and you're all amazing content producers, right? And you make some of the best content in the world. And our audience, they're coming to watch and engage. And I mean, I always say about TikTok is that you don't check TikTok, you watch TikTok. So actually, there's a real opportunity for you to be able to come and, to show that amazing AV that you're creating. All I would say is just think about how you're going to be able to tell your story and create that fun-stopping moment on TikTok. Think about, use tools like start with a human face. People come to the For You feed because they want to see real humans, they want to see authentic stories. So think about how you can start with a human story, and then also just use nice little techniques like, have twists and turns in the narrative of that content. To be able to really kind of give a flavor of the kind of the drama or the story you're trying to tell. And something I've already said this already, but sound is incredibly powerful. TikTok is a platform by its nature is that you have this whole new world of sound that you can capture attention, and always think about what is that audio cue that you can hook people in with your content. So I would absolutely say there is definitely a space for that more traditional AV content. Just think about those ways that you can tell your story in a quicker way.
I completely agree. I think when I first started at the BBC, somebody older and wiser said to me, look, the best footage is the stuff that you've recorded that people want to watch. And it doesn't really matter if it's polished or if it's completely looks like the camera's been dragged along the floor. As long as it's watchable, you're in. And you mentioned as well, TikTok is a vastly musical place, and people like emerging talents and music legends seem to be all on there doing things. Once they've reached a certain level of notoriety, what's the next step? How does TikTok build this sort of beneficial relationship with this sort of the cross-industry sort of pollination? So you've mentioned sort of movies, and I'm talking about music artists, but I guess it's even people here who might make short films, independent filmmakers, or people who are creating content for the web. How can that kind of grow?
Maybe I'll kick this one off. I think maybe big tip or a big piece of advice I always say to partners in the entertainment space is, as you've alluded to, look at what music artists do, and look at how music artists on TikTok go from unknown to superstars. And I think, look, my personal favorite is Sam Ryder. So I've been at TikTok not as long as Normano. I've been there 3 years now, but I'm almost, we're both kind of been around for a long time. And I remember Sam Ryder. He joined some of my initial meetings when I was working with partners in the entertainment space, because they wanted to hear from a music creator on platform. So now Sam Ryder has gone from joining some of my meetings, all of them on Zoom at that time, to actually now, as we all know, he's representing his country for Eurovision. He's now the face of all of our Eurovision content on platform, because TikTok we still have that amazing partnership with Eurovision. And the key to Sam's success was always that he was never scared to experiment. He showed a real authentic side to him, and also he showed the beginnings of either ideas or songs that he was building, and he just had a great communication with fans, and he built that fandom very organically. And he's just a wonderful person. He's got such a great character and great joyful character, and I think just try and take those take those nods and learnings from how you, if you're as a brand or if you're a media platform or a content producer, there's definitely some of those elements that we can all dial up on the platform.
I think on top of that, what's interesting about the music industry and TikTok is how they manage to really do two things. On one side, empower artists to become creators, because like artists on TikTok is not necessarily about like putting songs out there, but it's really acting like as creators, tell their own story. And I think like this is definitely something that in the media industry can be used as an example for like talent on the platform, like Ant and Dec are a great example of that, or like The Rock or Gordon Ramsay, who uses TikTok to comment on like people's recipes. So like having talents engaging on the platform the same way artists are becoming creators is definitely like a very interesting area. The other side, I will say, is leveraging sounds. I think like the music industry was very good in understanding that virality of like a specific piece of music can create a global phenomenon. I think in the media side of things, it's very much thinking about the kind of content that you're going to be putting out there, not as a one unique entity, but it's actually something that could be like a video piece that will be used by users to co-create content with it, but also the sound part, which is the most interesting part, which is what Steven was alluding to before. We've seen recently users using the intro song of Succession, for example, to create their own version of like the Succession family. And I think like taking that and really thinking about your content in how can it start a conversation and how can it really allow users to co-create around it is a really good way to think about it.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to try and roll together some of the many questions that are going on Slido. I'm sorry that I won't be able to ask all of them, but one of them, I love this idea because you're all loyal enough to watch to the end, so thank you for that. And I think as a reward, it would be lovely to know what the cheat codes for TikTok are. For those people who want to leverage there's a question about how do you create leverage when you've got no budget, you're not well known, you're not a celebrity, you're not a big brand, you're just some guy. So let me rephrase this. What are you looking for when you decide to do paid partnerships or interact with creators? I mean, maybe that's the best way to ask this question.
Maybe I'll kick it. Well,
so the first one, and actually going back to that UGC versus highly produced content, I think like having the mix of both, I think like it's really important for us to keep experimenting on the platform. The second thing is to leverage the discoverability that the For You feed can offer. So it's very much thinking about your content as if you were reintroducing your brand every time, because you might be speaking to people that are outside of the comfort zone of your fan base. So how you interact with that, how you create content that is snappy, that like will have like a reaction, that will want to like to have like creators and users to react on the basis of that is extremely important. And then one final area that is important to mention that we are seeing more and more is like making sure that your content is getting not only optimized for the For You feed, but also that is searchable by users. And this is because on one side, the For You feed will surface you content that you are interested in too, but we are seeing more and more users leveraging the search function to find what they like on the platform. So making sure that you're having this ambidextrous approach on one side, leveraging the discoverability of the platform, and on the other side, making sure that people can discover that content is really important.
Yeah, and I'd maybe just say, just add to that as well, you know, it's a very democratic space, TikTok. And when it comes to, you know, we have people going from very humble beginnings, like, you know, unknowns, and then turning into global superstars, like Francis Bourgeois, his love of trains and his passion for that. And that's why I would say, just embrace that passion. There's so many different fandoms on our platform. And then, you know, you can become a huge star in the For You feed. There's nothing stopping you.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm afraid we're out of time, but thank you so much. My goodness, it's been a real pleasure having you here. And we're going to wrap for now. Audience, in 5 minutes' time, it's going to be Ria Hebden moderating the Screenwriters Masterclass. Meanwhile, I'm going to walk the show floor and drink as much coffee as humanly possible. I'll be back at 5:20 on the technology stage. I'm going to be chatting with Illuvio's CEO, Michelle Munson. Thank you so much, Steven Normano from TikTok. I've been LJ Rich. You've been amazing.